Ruth 1, 1 through 17. During the time of the judges, there was a famine in the land. A man left Bethlehem in Judah with his wife and 2 sons to stay in the territory of Moab for a while. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife's name was Naomi. The names of his children were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They entered the fields of Moab and settled there. Naomi's husband, Elimelech, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. Her sons took Moabite women as their wives. One was named Orpah, and the second was named Ruth. After they lived in Moab about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and the woman was left without her 2 children and without her husband. She and her daughters-in-law set out to return from the territory of Moab, because she had heard in Moab that the Lord had paid attention to his people's need by providing them food. She left the place where she had been living, accompanied by her 2 daughters-in-law, and traveled along the road leading back to the land of Judah. Naomi said to them, "Each of you go back to your mother's home. May the Lord show kindness to you as you have shown to the dead and to me. May the Lord grant each of you rest in the house of a new husband." She kissed them and wept loudly. They said to her, "We insist on returning with you to your people." But Naomi replied, Return home, my daughters. Why do you want to go with me? Am I able to have any more sons who could be your husbands? Return home, my daughters. Go on, for I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me to have a husband tonight and to bear sons, would you be willing to wait for them to grow up? Would you restrain yourselves from remarrying? No, my daughters, my life is too much bitter for you to share, because the Lord's hand has turned against me. Again they wept loudly, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Naomi said, "Look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Follow your sister-in-law." But Ruth replied, "Don't plead with me to abandon you, or to return and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me and do so severely, if anything but death separates you and me." You may be seated.
Thank you, Ava. Nice job. Those words from Ruth are maybe among the most beautiful words throughout the entire scriptures. You know, you've probably heard those read at weddings. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. But in a world where people easily walk away when things get difficult, Ruth stayed. Ruth remained faithful to her mother-in-law. When she had every reason to leave, she remained faithful. And let's be honest, mothers-in-law don't always get that kind of loyalty, right? That kind of faithfulness feels rare today, to stay no matter what. We live in a culture, I think, that celebrates convenience over commitment, quitting over perseverance, and temporary happiness over lasting loyalty. But throughout the scriptures, and especially through people like Ruth that Ava just read about, we see that faithfulness still matters to God. God requires faithfulness, really. And this morning, as we continue our message series called Rooted Upward, Growing Toward God, we're going to talk about the kind of faithfulness that stays, even when things get difficult. And really, we've been talking about character formation throughout this whole series. We've been looking mostly at the fruit of the Spirit, which comes from Galatians chapter 5, and it says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against such things." And the question we've been really answering is, how can others tell that I'm a devoted follower of Jesus Christ? And we've been saying it's by the fruit that we bear, right? It's the fruit that we bear, and the fruit that we bear comes from the character that is developed within us. Senator Mark Hatfield tells his story of visiting Calcutta, going around with Mother Teresa. Remember Mother Teresa? They had visited a place known as the Home of the Dying, where doctors and nurses cared for sick children who were living in their last days, and they were there to die. It was also a place where the poor would show up by the hundreds every day to receive medical attention. But Senator Hatfield was watching as Mother Teresa was ministering to these dying people, and as she fed them and cared for them and nursed them, these were people who were left by others, kids who were left by others to die. Hatfield became so overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the suffering that Mother Teresa and her co-workers faced on a daily basis. He finally asked her, "How can you bear the load without being crushed by it?" Mother Teresa looked at Hatfield and she replied, "My dear Senator, I am not called to be successful. I am not called to be successful. I am called to be faithful." I'm called to be faithful. Faithfulness may not be flashy and it may not look great sometimes, but it can change the world. And in today's world, it feels like faithfulness does come down to a matter of convenience. I'll remain faithful as long as it's easy. I'll remain faithful as long as I don't have to work too hard at it. But when the going gets tough, it's okay. I can quit. And culture kind of celebrates that. We can quit when it seems to go difficult. Commitments are temporary. Loyalty is conditional. Relationships are disposable. Sports fans hop from one bandwagon to another. Unless you're a Browns fan and you just kind of stick through, no matter what. But yeah. It's unfortunate. Dads walk out on their families. Citizens give up on their communities. We see people, it's easier to quit than to remain faithful in these situations. It's just easier. We become so commitment phobic that some people can't even commit to a Netflix series anymore. All right, 3 episodes in, too slow, I'm done. We quit. Maybe you're like I am and you wonder, is there any faithfulness left on earth? Is there any faithfulness going to be found? And I'll be honest, as a minister, as a pastor, as a preacher, it's tough sometimes to maybe remain faithful. You pour into people, you pray for people, you preach your heart out, and sometimes you wonder if it even matters. And maybe you were there in your life. You do all these things and you wonder, what's the point? David wrote in Psalm 12:1, "Help, Lord, for no faithful one remains. The loyal have disappeared from the human race," he says. Faithfulness feels so rare in this world. Where do we learn it? Well, we can learn it from God himself, right? Faithfulness is remaining loyal to God because he has remained loyal to us through thick and thin. So we remain loyal to him. We need men and women in the church who can stand up, who can become world changers and stand up and say, you know what? I'm not called to be successful. I'm not called to have my ears tickled. I'm not called to a life of ease. I'm not called for anything else in this world except to be faithful to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. The word translated as faithfulness comes from the Greek word pistis. It means faith. We get the word faith from the same word. It carries with it 2 distinct characteristics. First of all, it means to have a conviction about something. That's faith. I'm convicted, and so I'm going to put my belief in that, right? You may not see it. You may not understand it completely, but you have enough evidence to know deep within your heart that it's real. And so you have faith. It's Hebrews 11:1, which says, "Now faith is the reality of what is hoped for. It's the proof of what is not seen." That's faith. It's conviction about something you don't know for sure, but you know it's real. The second definition of faithfulness is the one that we find listed here among the fruit of the Spirit here in Galatians 5:22, and it means fidelity. It means to be trustworthy. It means to be reliable. Who can we trust really today? On whom do you rely? Right? A lot of times we'll just say, I can only really depend on myself. I really only depend on me. I'm the only one I can trust in. There doesn't seem to be much left in trusting anybody else. We don't trust the economy. We don't trust the government. We don't trust our next door neighbors, maybe some of us. And maybe some of us, we don't even trust our husbands and wives. Like, I got my phone on lockdown. Don't even look. Right? But what if the church, we became a people in whom others could trust? Because honestly, the church is low on that list as well, unfortunately. People have lost faith and trust even in the church. But what if we were different, Connection Christian Church? What if we allowed the Holy Spirit to work in our lives so much that we became the people that others could turn to, that others could rely on? because of our faithfulness. Our faith and conviction in God can be strong enough, hopefully, to move us to become faithful in a faithless world. So in a time when everybody trusts nobody, I want to give us three aspects of faithfulness we find throughout the scriptures, because I believe followers of Jesus Christ, more than anybody else in this whole planet, ought to be the most trustworthy and reliable people here. We ought to be able to trust our fellow Christian brothers and sisters. We ought to be able to trust each other, and people ought to be able to trust us because of who we are in our faith in Jesus Christ. So if you're taking notes, here's the first one. Faithfulness defines who God is. You want some motivation to be faithful? Well, let's look at God for a second, because throughout the Old Testament, we read story after story after story about how faithful God was to his people, the Israelites. God came through on his promise to Abraham. Remember, in his old age, I'm going to give you a son, and sure enough, it happened. God came through for Abraham and Sarah and gave them a son, and thus really began the nation of Israel. God used later on Joseph's unfaithful brothers to sell him into slavery into Egypt, and only to raise him to a high rank in Egypt, so that through Joseph, God was able to save the Israelites from famine and death and all of that. When the Israelites complained to Moses in the wilderness, you know what God wanted to do? He wanted to wipe them from the face of the earth. He's like, I'm done with these people. And Moses said, hold on a second, Lord, and reminded God about his faithfulness and said no. And so God remained faithful to the Israelites after they came out of Egypt, and he provided them with food and water. And you know what else? He provided them with clothing and sandals that didn't wear out for 40 years. God remained faithful to them. God helped Samson and a bunch of other judges deliver the Israelites from oppression, especially from the Philistines. He sent prophets to the Israelites time and time again to bring them back to him. He even returned the Israelites to their homeland after 70 years of exile. He brought them home, and then he sent them a baby boy who would not only save them, but would save the world. Faithfulness defines exactly who God is. It defines exactly who he is. And throughout the scriptures, I think we see at least 4 descriptions of that faithfulness of God. And these aren't in your notes. Let me give them to you very quickly, though. But 4 of them. God's faithfulness, first of all, is vast. It's immense. There's a lot of it. Psalm 36:5 says, Lord, your faithful love reaches to heaven, your faithfulness to the clouds. This is God's faith. It's vast, it's huge, it's immense. There's a lot of it to go around. Secondly, God's faithfulness is extensive. It's extensive. In other words, God's faithfulness reaches beyond the Israelites in the Old Testament. It reaches beyond the church in the New Testament, beyond the apostles of the New Testament, and it reaches to us today and through all generations until the end of time. Psalm 100, verse 5, for the Lord is good, and his faithful love endures forever. His faithfulness through all generations. It's extensive. It reaches us today. Just as God did not give up on the Israelites, even when he wanted to wipe them from the face of the earth, he will not give up on us. Why is that? It's easy. Love. He loves us. He's not going to give up on us because he loves us. You and I matter to God. He loves us. Third, God's faithfulness is safeguarding. It's safeguarding. It's protective, if you will. In 1 Corinthians 10:13, we find this promise. The Apostle Paul writes, no temptation has come upon you except what is common to humanity. If you're suffering it now, somebody else is also going through it, okay? He says, but God is what? Faithful. God is faithful. He will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. But with the temptation, he will also provide the way out so that you may be able to bear it. Now, I want you to understand something here, because this is important. This verse does not mean that God will not give you more than you can handle. In fact, there is no verse in the scriptures that says that. I know as Christians, sometimes we like to say, oh, God will never give us more than we can handle. But let's be real for a second. We might have to deal with cancer. That's a lot to handle. We might have to deal with a death in the family. That's not easy. We might have to deal with a cheating spouse. We might have to deal with that back pain that just won't go away. There are things in our life that we might have to deal with, and man, it's going to feel like, I can't handle this. The one thing that God says he will help us with, that he will help us handle, is the level of temptation that Satan brings against us. Because of God's faithfulness, he'll protect us and provide a way for us to stand against the devil's schemes. He will provide a way out. The one thing God promises to help us handle, that he will not give us too much to handle, is temptation. You can handle it. Okay? And then finally, God's faithfulness, number 4, is unrelenting. It doesn't give up. For us humans, maybe that's hard to comprehend, that's difficult to fathom, because it's easy, I think, for us to say, man, I'm done. It's easy for us to say, I quit. It's convenient. Have you ever wanted to give up on anything? Maybe you've questioned your existence. Why am I here? What's my purpose? What's God want me to do? Would anyone notice if I weren't here? And you're just like, I'm done. Maybe you've lost your faith. Like, I can't do it anymore. I'm done. Maybe a lot of Christian people drive you crazy. I'm done. Can't take it anymore. Maybe someone in the church offended you and you just feel like, man, there is no hope left in this world. I'm done. Not God. Not God. I want to encourage you with these words from 2 Timothy 2:13. It says, if we are faithless, which we become faithless once in a while, if we are faithless, God remains faithful. Isn't that great? That's his character. That's who he is. He remains faithful. Even in the times when we go, I don't think I can do this anymore. God is still with us. God is still there, no matter what. So what if we were to take on God's character of faithfulness? Can we become the reliable, trustworthy, loyal people that God is? That's the challenge today. Faithfulness may not be flashy, but it could change the world. And if God's faithfulness is not enough to inspire us to be faithful, maybe the second one is, and that is faithfulness was displayed by Jesus. Man, Jesus displayed his faithfulness for all to see. You look at his story throughout the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we see how faithful Jesus was. Everybody was leaving him. Throngs of people were going away. Everyone else walked away. His siblings thought he was crazy. They didn't want to have anything to do with him. Oh, he's crazy. His friends fled. Judas betrayed him. Peter denied him. The crowds rejected him. Nails pierced him. And then still, Jesus remained faithful. He remained faithful. He remained faithful to his calling because, why? He loved the world. It comes back to love. Jesus remained faithful all the way through to the end of the cross because he knew we could never save ourselves. Jesus remained faithful through it all. Hebrews 3:6 says, but Christ was faithful as a son over his household. He was taking care of us while on the cross. And I don't know what some of you brought in with you this morning. I don't know what you're going through. I know some of you are struggling. But for others of you, I can't comprehend the battle that some of you are facing today. And it's got to be tough. I do know this, though. 1 John 1:9, there's one area he can heal, and that is if we confess our sins, Jesus is faithful. Jesus is faithful. He is righteous to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. And maybe some of us this morning, we just need a soul cleansing. You take it to Jesus, and in his faithfulness, he will cleanse you. Maybe some of us need strength in our marriage. Jesus is faithful, and he can give us the strength. Maybe some of us need to overcome an addiction. Alcohol, drugs, pornography, screen time, possessions, whatever that is for you. Jesus, in his faithfulness, can help us be victorious. All we've got to do is take it to him, and he will be there for us. Jesus is faithful. Let me give you the last one. Faithfulness defines who God is. Faithfulness was displayed by Jesus. And then thirdly, faithfulness must be developed within us. It's something we develop in our character. And it's tough. Let's be honest. Faithfulness is one of those tough ones for me. I think it's tough as a culture because when we look at faithfulness, let's ask this question. What does it really get us? That's okay to ask. Like, if I'm faithful to Jesus, if I'm faithful to God, if I'm faithful to showing up in church, what's it really going to get me? We know it might cost us something. It cost Jesus his life. It cost the apostles their lives. What does faithfulness get us? It's strenuous. It takes a lot of hard work. It might cost us some time. It might cost us some money. It interrupts our schedule. It doesn't fit in our calendars sometimes to remain faithful. And being faithful stretches us from a character of convenience, when it's easier to just give up, to this character of grit and determination to keep getting after it. What does faithfulness get us? You want the answer? Proverbs 3. It says, never let loyalty and faithfulness leave you. Tie them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Hold on to your faithfulness. Here's what it gets us, verse 4. Then you will find favor and high regard with God and people. How many of you want God to smile on you? Right? He says, remain faithful and I will smile on you. And then people, they're going to be glad about it too. Mary's faithfulness won the heart of God, and she has a baby boy who saves the world. Jesus' faithfulness, in Luke chapter 1 says it won the hearts of God and man. It was the faithfulness of the apostles and the church as they met together in the book of Acts. It says that they won the favor of all the people. Could you imagine a church that wins the favor of all the people in a world where the people don't trust the church anymore? We can become that church. We can become that church where people find favor here at Connection Christian Church because of who we are and our faithfulness to God. We may not know the true impact our faithfulness may make on the world, but our faithfulness delights the heart of God and could win the hearts of people all around us. And if anything, our faithfulness will earn us the greatest reward we will ever receive, because Jesus says to us in Revelation chapter 2, verse 10, be faithful to the point of death, and I will give you the crown of life. That's what it's all about. If we can keep our eyes on that prize, faithfulness will come, I think, almost naturally. That's what matters, the crown of life. Faithfulness is this spiritual stick-to-itiveness, the daily choice to remain with God when quitting would be easier. Faithfulness has got to be a priority. No matter who's watching us, whether we're alone or in a crowd, we're faithful. Whether good times or bad, we remain faithful. Whether we're confident or we have doubts. Doubts are okay, but we remain faithful to God. Ava read about Ruth earlier. You know, her faithfulness. She did not know that her faithfulness would place her in the lineage of Jesus Christ. Isn't that cool? Like Jesus would descend from her later on, years down the road. She didn't know that's what that would gain her. She was simply faithful one step at a time. And most of the time, that's how God works through us too. It's one step at a time in remaining faithful. What's that look like? Well, I don't know. Faithfulness is praying, maybe when you don't feel like it. It's loving your spouse when marriage gets difficult. It's showing up to church and worship when you feel discouraged. It's obeying God when nobody's looking or even noticing. It's continuing to trust God when answers don't come as quickly as you like. That's faithfulness. The world may celebrate convenience, but God calls us to something higher, and that is to covenant faithfulness to Him. Not because it's easy, not because it's always rewarded here, but because our God has been faithful to us. And because one day, we long to hear those words, well done, good and faithful servant. This is a hard one for me, this next statement. And maybe it is for you. I don't know. Most people will never become famous. I always thought that would be kind of cool to be famous. Are you with me? Some of you are like, no, I don't want to be famous. Most people will never become famous. Most people will never change the world in dramatic ways like a Mother Teresa or somebody like that. Most of us are probably never going to go viral for our faithfulness. It's not like we're going to post, hey, day 4,287 of remaining faithful to my wife. That's not going to go viral, right? Nobody's going to notice that kind of thing, but you know what? Heaven notices. Every single day, ordinary acts of faithfulness echo into eternity. A faithful husband, a faithful wife, a faithful prayer life, a faithful church member, a faithful servant of God. And it's not easy. And faithfulness, it may not be flashy, but it sure can change the world.